Hello, I'm Suzanne Van Fleet, and I'd like to tell you about my book, Taking the Stars to Heaven. I have been helping people cross over when they get stuck in their exits for 30 years now. But it all started when I was standing at my kitchen sink and looking out the window when all of a sudden my thoughts were interrupted by the radio announcing that actor William Holden was dead. And I felt sad because so many of my parents' generation, the great movie stars, were dying. And I knew he had been dating Stephanie Powers because I'd seen their pictures in the paper and they just looked so nice together. So I was about to offer a prayer on his behalf when the news continued that the coroner said that William Holden had committed suicide. And I thought, oh, maybe he needs a little bit more than just a prayer. So I sat down to meditate, counting down to this room that my meditation teachers had taught me to create within. And I'm counting down, but I never got to that little room. Instead, I found myself in a strange room with a dead body over on the floor. And I really didn't know what to do. I was a little bit panicked. And I thought, well, I wanted to help, but what do I do? And all of a sudden, he started waking up. I think he had been unconscious all that time. And he saw me and he thought I was some babe he had dragged home. And didn't have the courtesy to go home. Well, suddenly my new status as a bimbo kind of took away the fear and the panic. And I started trying to convince him that he was dead because he was sure he wasn't. And it was funny because I could hear his thoughts in my mind. Fortunately, he couldn't hear mine. But anyway, he got up off the floor. I followed him out of the room and he told me, you can have one drink and then you gotta go. Well, I started trying to convince him that he was dead, but he was not listening. He was just starting to think maybe this was a crazy lady he dragged home. And finally, I'm running out of things to try, and I said, Bill, you should know you're dead. You committed suicide. Well, that just convinced him that I was definitely crazy, but did nothing to help me along. So I finally asked for help. I just closed my eyes and said, please help me help this man. And all of a sudden, there was another body over there. And I said, come over here and look at this. And it was shocking to him. Imagine seeing yourself. So all of a sudden, something caught the attention of both of us, and we start looking, and we're going, we're both bent over, our heads are practically touching, and said, whoa, you didn't kill yourself. It looks like you passed out, hit your head, and bled to death. And now he knew he was dead, but he didn't want to leave. And so I asked for help again. And this time a woman appeared, and I couldn't tell what she was thinking. I could communicate with her, but there wasn't even time for that because he turned and saw her. They were standing right together. And suddenly it didn't matter anymore. It really didn't matter. He took her hands and they just left. They were gone. And I was suddenly back in my kitchen and my whole world had changed. And this was something very definitely to think about. Wasn't going to tell anybody until, well, that resolve lasted an hour. My sister got home and I just babbled at her everything that had happened. She had the courtesy not to roll her eyes at me, but she just said, how interesting. The next day she came back and said, I owe you an apology. She said, when I was driving home today, the newscaster said that the coroner had retracted the suicide story, that Bill had evidently passed out, hit his head, and bled to death. And so I thought, oh, thank you. I was able to help. But this is a one-time thing. And then Cary Grant died. And it's been happening like that ever since. So, thank you for listening.